It wasn't dramatic, just a soft click. Then the hum of the air conditioner stopped. The repair shop went dark except for the thin slice of sunlight sneaking through the dusty blinds. I froze, one hand still inside the fuse box, and laughed under my breath. Well, that's not supposed to happen. From the other side of the counter, she didn't move. I heard her exhale, slow and calm, like this wasn't the first time the power had gone out on her. Guess that's one way to test your work, she said. Her voice was steady, low, the kind of tone that makes you feel like you're the one being examined. I'd been here 3 times this month, technically for wiring issues, but mostly because she kept calling the same small service company, and I was the one who got sent. She owned the antique bookstore that shared a wall with the repair shop, narrow aisles, dust that smelled like stories, and music that always played too quietly to name. Even in the dim light, I could still make out her outline. Arms folded, hair tied back, eyes catching the faint glow from outside. There was something about her posture. Unhurried, certain, like she'd learned long ago that silence makes people talk more than questions do. I cleared my throat. Might just be the main breaker. Happens when the wiring's old. She smiled. I could hear it in her voice before I saw it. Everything in this building's old, including the woman who runs it. That threw me off. I started to say something, a reflex, some polite reassurance, but stopped. She was watching me too closely for me to lie. You don't look it, I said finally. It came out quieter than I meant. The silence stretched. Then she laughed, not loud, but soft enough to sting in a good way. You should finish fixing the lights before you start saying things you'll regret. So I went back to work, pretending to focus on the fuse box. My hands weren't steady. I could feel her presence behind me, a weight in the air that wasn't heavy but impossible to ignore. Every few seconds, the sleeve of my shirt brushed the edge of the counter, and I'd catch a trace of her perfume, subtle, like rain on something warm. Doesn't bother you, working in the dark? She asked. No, I said. Sometimes it's better that way. Why? I hesitated. Because people stop trying to look like they're not feeling something. Another silence. Then she said, almost a whisper, good. Now you can't see how much I want you. I froze. Not because of the words, but because she said them without moving closer, without even changing her tone. It sounded like she was talking to herself, or to the space between us. I turned, but the light from outside caught her face just enough to show the smallest smile, one that vanished before I could decide if I'd imagined it. Then the power flickered back on. The hum returned. The world looked too bright. She blinked against the sudden light. See? She said, her voice normal again. You fixed it. I nodded, pretending my heart wasn't in my throat. Yeah, must have been a loose line. Guess we both have those, she said softly. I packed up my tools, but my hands were clumsy, like I'd forgotten how to use them. She stood by the doorway, one hand resting on the frame, the other brushing a curl from her face. The light hit her wedding ring. Or maybe it was just a band she wore out of habit. I couldn't tell. I didn't ask. When I left, the doorbell above the frame chimed, small, hollow, too cheerful for the moment. I walked out into the afternoon glare, blinking hard, pretending it was the sun making my eyes sting. I've fixed hundreds of lights since then. But that day, that sentence, still lives in the dark behind my ribs. She'd called about the flickering light in the back storeroom. Said it was probably nothing, but she'd feel better if someone took a look. I told myself it was just another job, though I checked the schedule 3 times that morning, pretending it mattered when I showed up. Inside, the shop felt smaller, softer somehow. The air was thick with the smell of paper and rain-soaked wood. She stood by the counter, sleeves rolled up, her hair damp from the walk between buildings. There were faint circles under her eyes, the kind that don't come from one bad night, but from months of carrying something quietly. You came quick, she said, smiling like it cost her effort. Storm knocks things loose, I said. Didn't want it to get worse. She nodded, but didn't move. Her hand lingered on the countertop, fingertips tracing the wood like she was trying to remember something about it. When I reached for the light switch, she startled slightly, a small flinch, barely visible. Then she laughed it off. Sorry, long week. I wanted to ask what kind of week, but that wasn't my place. So I focused on the bulb above us. unscrewing it, pretending not to notice the silence stretching again. "You don't talk much," she said finally. "Not sure what to say sometimes." "That's usually the right thing," she said, then glanced away, almost embarrassed she'd said it. The light flickered back on, painting her in a soft yellow glow. Her face looked younger for a second, not because of the light, but because she wasn't guarding it. Then the moment vanished. She crossed her arms, stepping back. "You must get tired of fixing the same old wires." I shrugged. "Some things aren't meant to be replaced, just handled carefully." That made her look up at me. Just a second too long. A heartbeat she didn't pull away fast enough from. There was something in her eyes, not invitation, not resistance, just that quiet, aching recognition of being seen. I tried to focus on my tools, but I couldn't ignore the small details. The way her thumb brushed against the rim of her coffee mug, the tiny scar near her wrist, the soft line between her brows when she thought no one was looking. She had this way of filling silence, not with words, but with presence. It pressed against my chest, slow and steady, like gravity. The rain hit harder outside. Thunder rolled. I tightened the last screw and said, "Should hold now." "Good," she said softly. "I'm tired of things falling apart." I looked at her then, really looked. The way she stood, straight but not steady. The way her lips pressed together, as if holding back a truth too heavy to name. There was a beat of quiet, the kind that asks for something and dares you to answer. She exhaled, almost a whisper. "You should go before it gets worse out there." I didn't move. She didn't either. The bulb above us hummed faintly, the only sound between us. I could smell rain on her clothes, the faint sweetness of coffee gone cold. When I finally stepped back, she looked away, but I saw the smallest tremor in her hands, the kind that betrays what words refuse to say. Outside, the rain felt colder than it should have. Inside, the light stayed steady. But the storm had returned, heavier this time. I showed up at her shop near 8, soaked through, apologizing for being late. She just shook her head and waved me inside. "You're the only one who still comes out in weather like this," she said, locking the door behind me. The power flickered again. It was almost comforting now. The darkness, the hum of rain on the windows, the two of us suspended in a pocket of quiet. She made coffee without asking, moving slowly, like she was fighting the thought of something else entirely. We ended up sitting on opposite sides of the counter, steam rising between us. The light over us buzzed, struggling to stay alive. "Do you ever think about leaving this town?" she asked suddenly. The question came from nowhere. She was staring at the window, at the streetlight bending under the rain. "Sometimes," I said. "Then I think about what I'd miss." She smiled faintly. "You're too young to be that sentimental." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I just notice things other people don't." Her eyes flicked toward me. "Like what?" I hesitated. I could have said you. The way she chewed her lip when she thought, or how her laughter always arrived a second late, as if she needed to give herself permission first. But I didn't. "Details," I said instead. "The way things change when they think no one's watching." She looked down, brushing her thumb along the coffee mug. "That's a dangerous habit. I've been told." A silence settled. Outside, thunder rolled again. Inside, the fluorescent light above us gave one last flicker, then died completely. She exhaled, half laughing. "Not again." I stood, stepping closer to the breaker panel in the corner. "I'll fix it. Stay there." But she followed anyway, holding her phone flashlight for me. The beam shook slightly in her hand. I could feel her presence right behind me, close enough that her breath touched the back of my neck when she leaned in to see. "Careful," she murmured. "That panel's ancient." "So am I," I said without thinking. She laughed softly, then stopped. Her shoulder brushed mine. Once. Then again, slower. Neither of us moved away. For a second, I thought she might, I don't know, say something. But instead, her phone buzzed on the counter. The sound broke everything. She stepped back fast, the flashlight wobbling. "Sorry," she said, voice quieter. She picked up the phone, looked at the screen, and turned it face down. The name that flashed before she did, Daniel, was enough. She stood still, not meeting my eyes. "You should finish up." I didn't realize it was this late. "Yeah," I said, though my hands didn't move. I could still feel the ghost of her touch, the warmth fading too slowly. When the light finally came back on, she'd stepped away, arms folded, her face unreadable again. I tightened the last screw, packed my tools, and turned to go. She said my name once, quietly, like she was testing if it still meant something to say it out loud. I stopped, half-turned. But she didn't add anything. Outside, the storm had eased, but my pulse hadn't. And when the door closed behind me, I could still hear her phone vibrating again, unanswered this time. It was a few days after the storm. I was packing up at the shop when she walked in, the doorbell breaking the monotony of my tools clicking shut. She looked different, not dressed up, not put together the way she usually was. Just tired. Real. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded, though something in me wanted to say no. Not because I didn't want to see her, but because I already knew what the silence between us would demand. We ended up sitting in the back room, the one that smelled like metal and oil. Rain threatened again outside, low thunder in the distance. She didn't look at me at first, just ran her finger along the table's edge, over a line of scratches I hadn't noticed before. "I shouldn't keep calling you," she said finally. "You don't have to explain." "I think I do," she whispered, "because I don't know why I keep doing it." Her voice trembled on the word why. She caught it quickly, straightened her posture, but the crack stayed in the air. I watched her, trying to find something safe to say, but there wasn't anything left that felt safe. "You're lonely," I said quietly. It came out more like a confession than an observation. She laughed once, but it didn't sound like laughter. "That's generous. I think I'm just untethered." "And you?" She stopped. "Me? You make it feel like I could still start over," she said, almost under her breath. "And that's not fair to either of us." I swallowed hard. The shop was too quiet now. Even the rain had gone still, like the world was holding its breath with us. "I don't know what we're doing," I said, "but I can't pretend it's nothing." Her eyes met mine then, direct, unwavering. It wasn't desire I saw. It was exhaustion, relief, fear. "You think this is something?" "Yes," I said. "And that's the problem." She leaned back, pressing her palms flat on the table. "You're young," she said. "You still believe things can be figured out." I stopped believing that years ago. "I don't want to figure it out," I said. "I just don't want to lie about it." She blinked, slow, then nodded, almost like she was agreeing with a truth she'd hoped I wouldn't say. The air between us felt electric again, but different this time, not charged with want, but with everything we were both trying to protect from ourselves. "Do you ever think about what happens next?" I asked. Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. Instead, she reached up, pressing her fingers to the bridge of her nose like she was holding back tears she'd promised never to show anyone again. After a long pause, she whispered, "This is the kind of thing that ruins people." The words hit harder than they should have. "I don't want to ruin you," I said. She looked at me then, not as a woman looking at a man, but as someone standing at the edge of a life they no longer recognized. Her voice was barely there when she replied, "I think it's already too late for that." It was early morning when she called, her voice softer than usual, almost unsure. "Could you stop by?" she asked. "There's something wrong with the backlights again." The lie was too thin to bother pretending. Still, I said yes. When I got there, the shop was closed. No music this time. Just the smell of old paper and rain seeping through the open window. She was sitting behind the counter, a stack of photographs spread out in front of her like a crime scene she couldn't make sense of. "I didn't mean to bother you," she said without looking up. "I just didn't want to be alone right now." I stepped closer. The pictures were worn, edges curled, colors faded. In one of them, a man stood beside her in front of the same bookstore, years younger. He had my height, my hair, even the same uneven smile. "That's him," she said quietly, tracing her finger over the image. "My husband." I didn't say anything. "He died 5 years ago," she continued. "Heart attack. Just like that. We were arguing about something stupid, I don't even remember what, and then he was gone." Her voice cracked on the last word, not from grief, but from the exhaustion of holding it in too long. She pushed another photo toward me. It was the same man, laughing, sunlight catching his face. "You look like him," she said. The words didn't land right away. They just hovered there, heavy, making the air too thick to breathe. I stared at the photo, then at her. That's why you called me back? Her eyes met mine. Guilt, confusion, something else tangled together. At first, maybe. I don't know. You reminded me of what it felt like to be seen again. And then I hated myself for it. I could feel something collapsing inside me. Not anger, not jealousy, just the slow realization that I'd been walking through someone else's ghost. I'm not him, I said. I know. She reached for the photo, but her hand shook. That's what scares me. She stood up, restless, pacing behind the counter. I keep trying to tell myself this isn't about him. But sometimes when you walk in, I forget how long it's been. I forget what's real. The silence after that felt like it could split the floor. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that whatever this was, it wasn't just projection. But the truth sat too raw between us. Finally, she said, you should probably stop coming here. The way she said it, not angry, not cold, just done, made my stomach twist. I nodded, even though everything in me rebelled. Okay, I said. She turned away, hands gripping the edge of the counter. You were right, she whispered. Some things aren't meant to be replaced. I just forgot how to handle them carefully. The window light shifted, brushing her face, and for a second I thought she might cry. But she didn't. She just looked at the photo one last time, then slid it into a drawer and shut it gently. The sound of that drawer closing felt final, like the last click of a lock neither of us had the key to. A week passed, then two. I told myself it was better that way, that maybe distance could smooth over whatever line we'd blurred. But every time I passed the bookstore, I slowed down. The lights were always on, but the closed sign stayed hanging, even during hours it shouldn't have. Then one evening, near closing time, I saw her inside. Alone. No music, no customers, just her. Sitting on the floor between two shelves, surrounded by open books she wasn't reading. The look on her face stopped me. It wasn't sadness exactly, more like quiet surrender. I knocked once on the glass. She looked up, startled, then hesitated before unlocking the door. I thought you weren't supposed to come back, she said softly. I wasn't, I replied. But you left the lights on. A faint smile. You always notice things like that. Inside, the air was thick with dust and rain. The place smelled the same. Ink, paper, memory. She stood up slowly, brushing her palms against her jeans. I've been meaning to fix the sign, she said, though we both knew she hadn't. We just stood there. No pretense, no reason. The distance between us felt thinner than ever, fragile in a way that made me afraid to move. Finally, she said, I keep trying to figure out what it was about you. Whether it was him I was seeing or something else entirely. What if it was both? I asked. She blinked, then nodded once, the kind of nod that admits defeat and understanding at the same time. Then maybe that's the truth I needed. We didn't talk for a while after that. The silence wasn't tense anymore, just full, like the space between two breaths. I sat down beside her on the floor. She didn't stop me. I miss being seen, she said after a long pause. Not adored, not needed, just noticed. I know, I said quietly. That's all I wanted to. She looked at me, really looked this time, no deflection, no guilt. Just two people realizing how far the world had carried them from who they used to be. There was no spark, no cinematic pull, just something steadier. Earned. Fragile. When her hand finally found mine, it didn't feel like crossing a line. It felt like recognition. A small, human gesture that didn't ask for more than it gave. Her thumb brushed against the edge of my palm once, barely there. Then she exhaled. We're not fixing anything, are we? No, I said. Just keeping the lights from going out. That made her smile, tired, genuine. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and the weight of it settled something in me I hadn't realized was restless. We stayed like that for a long time, listening to the rain begin again outside. No promises, no plans, just the quiet collapse of everything we'd been holding back. Not a beginning, not an ending. Just enough light left to see each other clearly.